Hello and welcome to this session on what is language. We're looking at this topic because it's got very much to do with what we teach. Um, we teach many different things as language teachers, primarily language skills, the four language skills of speaking, writing, reading and listening. Um, we also teach the language itself, which is why and that's the topic of this presentation, which is why I've put it in bold in this diagram here. We might also teach subjects. It's very common these days for English language teachers at school level to teach math or science or geography through English. So besides teaching the language and language skills, we may also be teaching a subject. And in many cases in the school context, we'll also be teaching values, life skills, study skills. So really English language teachers teach a lot of different things, or many different things. But what we're going to be looking at today is specifically the language, because we are language teachers after all. So what is it that we teach? Well, it may seem like an easy question to answer. However, it depends on how we look at it. And these three main views of language may vary according to the learners themselves, their parents, the institution, the teachers, and in many cases, the views of all of these different people will be different, and it's all got to do with what we believe language is. So there are three main ways of looking at language. We can take a functional view of language. We can take a structuralist view of language, in which we view language as the sum of its systems, or we can take an interactionist view of language. That is, language is how people interact. So these are the three main views of language that language teachers take. And institutions and parents also have their own specific beliefs based on these three main views. Or we could, which is my view, we could take the view that language is the sum of all of these three things. So let's look at each of these three views in more detail. So this is the functional view of language, and here we have some examples of language functions. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to decide in what situations would we say these things? In what situations would we use these language functions? Okay, so let's take a look at the first one. The first one is many happy returns. This is British English, so it may have caught you out. This is what British people say when they want to say happy birthday. Many happy returns means happy birthday in British English. So when it's somebody's birthday, you would use the language function many happy returns to congratulate them. I'm sorry for your loss is a language function that we use in funerals. I didn't mean it, I'm sorry. That's a language function for apologizing. This comes from the language of apologizing. When we want to apologize to somebody, this is something that we may say. And the last one is, of course, it's part of the functional language that we need in order to buy a train ticket. So this is one particular view of language, that we speak in fixed phrases, and that these fixed phrases are used for a particular communicative purpose. And this is one view of language teaching, and communicative language teaching subscribes to this view. Communicative language teaching is less worried about grammar and more worried about teaching people the phrases they need in order to survive and speak in different situations. So this is one view of language. Another view is the structuralist view, that language is basically the sum of its three systems. So language has its phonological system, which is the sound system, it's phonology. Language has grammar, so that's another system that exists in language. It's tenses and the other grammatical features of language. Language also has a lexical system. It's vocabulary, collocations, for example, which we'll look at more in a later session. So this is another view of language. This is the structuralist view, that language is basically a structure that the students need to master. And normally it's focused on grammar, but really language has three systems. It's phonology, it's grammar, and it's vocabulary. So somebody who takes this view of language would probably start teaching the students the grammar of English, the phonological features, vocabulary that the students need in order to be able to construct sentences. So it's a very structural view of what language is. And then finally, we have the interactionist view of language. Interactionists focus on the use of language as a social tool, and they analyze the way that we interact with each other in conversations, for example, and other situations. So somebody who takes this view of language would probably teach their students how to interact with each other. That would be the main focus of the course. So as you can see, depending on the view of language that we have as a language teacher or as an educational institution, the kind, or what we teach rather, really will vary quite a lot. And sometimes there might be a mismatch between what the parents believe language is and what the school believes language is, for example. Or the students may think that language is just its grammar, and we might be busy teaching them in a communicative way, and the students might be thinking, well, this teacher is not teaching me anything, because language is grammar, and communicative language teachers don't normally teach grammar very much. So it's important to take into account that there are different ways of looking at language, and I would argue that integrating the three is the best approach, because like the Asian story of the elephant, the elephant is not just it's not a rubber hose, it's not a piece of string, it's not a big fat sack of potatoes, and the elephant is a mixture of all of these three things. And as language teachers, that's important, especially if a school or our students ask us to teach a particular aspect of language. If students ask to be taught the grammar of the language, then that's what we need to teach, because for them that's important, even though we may believe that language is more functional, or that language is a mixture of the three different views. It would be important to take the students' views into account, the students' view of language into account. Okay, so what do you need to do this week? As last week, write a 500-word learner diary entry in Word using this presentation that you've just watched. Pages 16 and 17 of Richards and Rogers. I've uploaded that document, that book, onto our Google Drive into a new folder called Reading Material. And the section on pages 16 and 17 that I'd like you to look at is the section called The Theory of Language. Another thing that I'd like you to read in order to write your learner diary entry is pages 32 to 33 of Muriel Saville-Troike's material. I've also uploaded that onto Google Drive, and the particular section that I'd like you to read is a section called The Nature of Language. And when you're writing your 500-word learner diary entry, you could use this structure to help you. Number one, what are the main views of language? Number two, what are the general characteristics of language? And number three, what did you learn from watching and reading the material this week? So I'd like you to upload your learner diary onto the folder in the Google Drive, into your folder, and also read the diaries. Try to read the diaries of at least 3 other participants, because I'm sure you'll learn something from reading somebody else's point of view. And attend the tutoring session, date and time to be confirmed, in the WhatsApp. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful. Remember that you can always ask questions in the WhatsApp group. Please do share your questions with the others, because I'm sure that your question will be a question that somebody else will also have. Goodbye for now.